When you're down, life has a weird way of kicking you. At least that's how it seemed for me, Ava. I was simply a typical 25-year-old, navigating the typical chaos of a life that frequently appeared to get out of control. The routine duties of a job as uninspired as watching paint dry occupied my days. My evenings, they were devoted to arguments with my 3-year boyfriend, Jake. Jake was a complex person. He was the kind of man who would make you laugh until your stomach aches on good days. He was the maestro of harsh words and chilly shoulders on bad days. After too many arguments about topics none of us would remember the next day, our relationship was in shambles. On one very dull Thursday night, I was seated across from Jake at our regular location, a rundown diner that had seen better days. Grease and old coffee filled the air, providing a perfect setting for another round of our never-ending arguments. "Why do you always have to be so damn difficult, Ava?" Jake's patience was growing low when he snapped. "Difficult, me?" My voice rose in fury as I shot back. "You're the one who's impossible to talk to." Like an old-fashioned merry-go-round, the discourse continued to circle back and forth. Money, commitment, the future, you name it, we argued about it. The problems and arguments were always the same. Each of our remarks was more painful and cutting than the one before it, like daggers. The chilly night air didn't make us any less irate as we departed the eatery. We were all wallowing in our own rage throughout the quiet walk home. One could feel the tension, a dense mist that would not go away. The quiet persisted when we returned to our small apartment. It seemed as though we had ran out of things to say, the resentment of our disagreement leaving us both worn out and dejected. The clock's constant ticking served as the sole sound, a constant reminder of the time we were squandering. As I lay in bed that night, I kept thinking about what went wrong. Would my life be like this for the rest of it? Incessant arguments with a man who appeared to be growing weirder by the day. Breathing became difficult due to the oppressive weight of the notion on my chest. I decided that I could no longer live this way in that depressing time. There has to be a change. I had no idea that the cosmos had already started things that would alter my life in ways I could never have predicted. As the storm clouds of my life gathered on the horizon, ready to explode, I fell asleep for the time being. Tragic events occurred just when I believed things couldn't get much worse. I was in a terrible vehicle accident with my parents. It went by so quickly. We were smiling and chatting one minute, and then there was anarchy and suffering. The world as I knew it had fallen apart when I awoke in the hospital. I was left alone with a broken back and immobile legs when my parents passed away. I was unable to envision my own future. It was the end of my life as I knew it. I was drowned in the idea that perhaps, just possibly, my life as I knew it was over as I lay in the antiseptic white of my hospital room. With their meticulously neutral expressions, the physicians warned me that I would have a long, maybe endless path to recovery. They stated, "Rehabilitation will be a significant journey," in a tone that was a combination of sympathy and professional distance. Their silence, however, conveyed a stronger and more frightening message. They didn't want to instill false hope in me. During one of those innumerable, hazy days of mute hopelessness, Jake entered my room with his parents following him. Their eyes were a little too bright, their grins a little too tight, the expression people get when they're trying to be strong for someone else. Jake approached the edge of my bed and simply stared at me for a while. At that moment, I observed a resolve in his eyes that I had not before noticed. That earnestness frightened me a little, since there was nothing he could say that would make this scenario any less of a nightmare. "Ava," he said, his voice breaking as if he were repressing feelings that were too strong for him. "I understand that you're going through a terrible time right now, and I realize that this is probably the worst time. However, I am no longer able to pretend. I can't pretend that my feelings for you aren't the most genuine feelings I've ever had. His surprising and weighty comments lingered in the air. Then Jake did something really insane before I could even comprehend what he was saying. There on the hard, chilly floor of my hospital room, he went down on one knee. Ava, you are loved. In my whole life, I have never loved anything or anybody as much as I love you. Get married to me. Allow me to look after you and stay at your side during this or whatever happens next. His parents were standing a little distance behind him, their eyes welling with tears. His mother nodded at me as though to encourage me to say yes, while dabbing at her eyes with the back of her hand. In a nonverbal gesture of approval, Jake's father, who rarely speaks, just put a helping hand on his shoulder. My mind was racing with feelings of dread, love, doubt, and hope, and I was unable to speak. All of them fought inside of me. However, something inside of me suddenly opened up when I saw the unadulterated honesty in Jake's eyes. Yes, I said in a scarcely audible whisper. Yes, I'll marry you. The relief and joy on Jake's face were like a sunrise after the darkest night. His parents came closer, both of them assuring me, "We're going to take care of you, dear, as if you were our own daughter. Your family now." The wedding itself was nothing like I had ever imagined my wedding would be. It was small, intimate, with only the closest of our relatives and friends. I was in my wheelchair, feeling a mix of exhaustion and happiness, a bizarre cocktail of emotions. But when I saw the faces of those who came, saw their genuine smiles and teary eyes, I knew this was right. This was real. Despite the unorthodox circumstances, that day was a blur of love, a testament to something I wasn't sure I believed in anymore, hope. Jake and I, hand in hand, faced our small audience. Our vows were more than just words. They were promises, a bridge over the uncertainty of my recovery and our future. As we sealed those vows with a kiss, I allowed myself to believe, maybe for the first time since the accident, that life wasn't over. It was just taking a road I hadn't planned on, a route I wouldn't have to navigate alone. After Jake and I got married, we moved into the big fancy house my parents left me. It was already fixed up for someone in a wheelchair, with handrails everywhere and special accommodations in the bathroom to help me take a shower or a bath. At first, Jake seemed all caring and helpful, like he was really going to stand by me through thick and thin. But that changed faster than I expected. Not long after we moved in, Jake quit his job. He said it was because he needed to take care of me. But honestly, I wasn't seeing much of this so-called care. His excuse was that we didn't need to worry about money because of the inheritance I got from my parents. According to him, that meant he didn't need to work anymore. But here's the kicker. I ended up doing most things by myself. Cooking, trying to clean up as best as I could, struggling to take a bath. It was all on me. Meanwhile, Jake spent his days glued to his computer screen, playing games or hanging out with his buddies at some bar. He'd come home late, usually drunk, and then he'd start on me, calling me a burden and whatnot. It wasn't just Jake either. His parents, who used to be all sweet and caring before we got married, flipped a switch too. They'd come over, and I'd catch them giving me these looks of disgust when they thought I wasn't paying attention. It was like they saw me as some kind of mistake their son had made. One day, I'd had enough and confronted Jake about it. I was struggling to make a simple meal in the kitchen, and he just waltzed in, looking for something to snack on. Can't believe you're just lounging around all day while I bust my ass trying to do basic stuff. I snapped, my frustration boiling over. Jake just rolled his eyes, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "Oh, come on, Nava. You act like you're the only one who's got it tough. I gave up my job for you, remember? Gave up your job. Please, You've made that out to be some kind of noble sacrifice. All you do is mess around all day while I'm stuck dealing with all of this. I gestured around the kitchen, my voice cracking with emotion. And what's that supposed to mean? You think I enjoy having no life outside of this house? You think I like seeing you like this? His voice was getting louder, more aggressive. Having no life? You're out every other night, Jake. How's that having no life? And me. I didn't choose this. I didn't ask for any of it. I was shouting now, tears of anger and frustration welling up in my eyes. The argument spiraled from there, each of us hurling accusations and hurtful words until we were both too exhausted to continue. It was clear that day that the man I married, the family, I thought I'd gained a support system, but they weren't what I'd hoped for. They became just another set of obstacles in the harsh new reality of my life. As days turned into weeks, the atmosphere at home shifted from uncomfortable to outright hostile. Jake's parents, who once feigned concern and affection, now treated my home as their personal kingdom, blatantly disregarding respect and boundaries. Their behavior escalated quickly. They roamed the house as if it were theirs, rifling through the refrigerator at any hour, taking food without a word. The living room became their domain, the sofas indented from their constant lounging. The television blared from morning until night, filling the house with incessant noise that grated on my nerves. One afternoon, trying to find a moment of peace, I asked them again to lower the volume. "Could you please turn down the TV? I'm trying to rest, and it's really loud," I pleaded, my voice laced with frustration. My mother-in-law, without even glancing at me, waved dismissively and replied, "Oh, stop fussing. The volume's fine. You're just too sensitive." Their audacity left me fuming, but nothing prepared me for the discovery I made one quiet morning. I decided to go through my mother's jewelry, seeking a small connection to her, a moment of solace amid the chaos. When I opened the cherished box, my heart sank. The pearl beads, a precious keepsake from my mom, were gone. The shock of their absence was quickly overshadowed by anger when I later saw the missing beads adorning my mother-in-law's neck. I confronted her, my voice shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. "Those are my mother's pearls. How did they end up with you?" Feigning confusion, a poorly masked look of guilt flashed across her face before she retorted, "Your mother's? Don't be ridiculous. These have been mine for years. You should be ashamed, accusing me of such nonsense." Her words stung, solidifying my growing suspicions about the people I was dealing with. My discomfort turned to vigilance, and it wasn't long before I noticed other items missing. Paintings that once graced our walls, expensive dishes from my family's collection. Each disappearance chipped away at my sense of security, leaving me feeling more isolated and betrayed. The final straw came when I caught a glimpse of my mother-in-law one evening, sneaking out with a large, bulging black bag. Her hurried pace and the way she glanced around, thinking she was unnoticed, spoke volumes. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Confronting her the next day, I demanded, "What was in that bag you took out last night?" "More of my things. More of my parents' memories you decided you're entitled to." Her reaction was a mix of defensiveness and guilt. "You got it all wrong," she stammered, avoiding my gaze. "I was just taking some things to donate. Your accusations are hurtful and unwarranted." But her words rang hollow. The evidence was too damning, the pattern too clear. I was living with vultures, picking over the remains of my past life, my family's legacy. The realization was a bitter pill to swallow, leaving me to wonder how I could ever have thought these people were my family. Lily, my beacon in the fog of deceit surrounding me, was more than just a friend at this point. She was my ally in a house that felt more like enemy territory each day. During one of her routine visits for massage therapy, which had become one of my few solaces, I finally broke down and shared my darkest suspicions about Jake and his parents. The weight of my words hung heavy in the air, thick with betrayal and fear. Lily's response was immediate, a mix of outrage and practicality. Ava, we need solid proof. How about we plant some bugs in the house? Catch them red-handed. Her suggestion, radical as it seemed, was a lifeline. Desperation had a way of making the unthinkable suddenly seem like the only option. So we did just that. Lily expertly placed tiny recording devices in strategic locations around the house, her movements swift and unseen. The anticipation was torture, waiting for the right moment to listen to the recordings. When we finally sat down to review them, the sense of betrayal I felt was suffocating. Jake's voice was the first to cut through the silence. Once Ava is out of the picture, in that institution, everything here is ours. We'll live like kings. His mother's laughter was a chilling soundtrack to their scheming. That jewelry sale was just the start. We barely scratched the surface of what we can make off her inheritance. Even his father, always the quiet one, surprised me. Keep it down. We don't want her getting wind of this before everything's in place. But yeah, the sooner she's gone, the better. Lily and I exchanged a look of horror. The reality of my situation was worse than I had imagined. They weren't just stealing from me. They were planning to dispose of me, to erase me from my own life. I can't believe this. How could they be so cruel? I whispered, my voice barely audible, the hurt and disbelief rendering me almost speechless. Lily, ever my protector, squeezed my hand tighter. We won't let them get away with this, Ava. You're not alone in this fight. But the question of what to do next was daunting. Confrontation seemed too dangerous, given their plans for me. I need to be smart, I said, the gears in my mind turning. They think they're playing me, but now we've got them. I need a plan, something to turn this all back on them. Lily nodded, her determination mirroring my own. We'll figure this out together. They picked the wrong woman to mess with. As we plotted our next steps, the recordings continued to play, a grim soundtrack to our resolve. Each word from Jake and his parents fueled my determination to fight back, to reclaim my life and my dignity from those who had so callously tried to strip it away. That night at the dinner table felt more like a stage for a performance nobody wanted to attend. Jake and his parents, acting as though nothing was amiss, exchanged glances loaded with unspoken words. Their feigned ignorance was almost insulting. As we sat there, the chasm between us couldn't have been wider. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, the sting of their deceit cutting deeper with every secretive look they shared. Fueled by a mix of hurt and defiance, I turned to Jake, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "Jake, look at me," I said, waiting until I had his full attention, his eyes finally meeting mine. "Do you love me? Truly?" His reaction was a beat too slow, his smile too forced. "Of course I do. You're my wife," he replied, the words sounding rehearsed, empty. That smile, meant to reassure, only served to confirm my suspicions. I smiled back, a hollow mimicry of his, a silent acknowledgement of the lies that hung between us. Waking up to find the ramps gone was like waking up to a nightmare. The realization hit me hard. Without them, I was trapped, even more dependent on the very people who sought to control me. I confronted them at breakfast, my frustration boiling over. Why would you remove the ramps? How am I supposed to move around now? I demanded, my voice echoing in the suddenly quiet room. "It's for your safety, dear," my mother-in-law said. Her concern is fake, as the pearls she claimed were hers. "We worried you might fall. This is for the best." Their words were a thinly veiled attempt to further isolate me, to clip my wings. I stared at them, their faces a mask of faint innocence, and said nothing, my silence strategic, a calm before the storm. Behind their backs, I made calls, reached out to the service for the disabled, and enlisted my lawyer's help. They arrived unexpectedly, a welcome intrusion. The shock on Jake and his father's faces was palpable, a mix of fear and disbelief, as the team from the service began their assessment, immediately noting the absence of the ramps. My lawyer, ever the professional, wasted no time. "We're here to conduct a thorough inventory check," he announced, his tone brooking no argument. "An inventory was made after Ava's parents passed. We're going to verify that everything is as it should be." As the meticulous inventory unfolded, the stark reality of betrayal became increasingly apparent. My lawyer, a steadfast presence amidst the chaos, meticulously checked off each item against his exhaustive list. His professionalism a stark contrast to the emotional turmoil swirling around us. The absence of my mother's jewelry, my father's collection of expensive suits, the missing paintings that once adorned the walls with history and culture, antique dishes that were family heirlooms. Each missing item was a wound, a testament to the depth of deceit. I was surrounded by the in-laws, once so adept at weaving a facade of concern and familial warmth, who now found themselves cornered by the irrefutable evidence of their greed. Their initial shock quickly gave way to a desperate attempt to salvage whatever they could from the situation. Tears streamed down my mother-in-law's face as she turned to me, her voice quivering. "We're so sorry, dear. It all just got out of hand. Please, can't we move past this?" Her husband, my soon-to-be ex-father-in-law, echoed her sentiment, his voice breaking under the weight of his guilt. "We never meant to hurt you. It was greed foolishness. Please forgive us." But the time for forgiveness had long passed. I faced them, the weight of their betrayal heavy on my heart, yet my resolve unwavering. "Forgiveness? After everything you've done? You didn't just steal things. You tried to steal my dignity, my independence," I countered, my voice steady and strong. Turning to the police officers, I presented them with the inventory results and the recordings, undeniable proof of the in-laws' deceit. "These are the people you're looking for," I said, the finality in my voice, marking the end of this chapter of my life. The court proceedings were swift, the evidence overwhelming. The judge's gavel sealed their fate, sentencing them for their crimes, mandating the return of what could be salvaged from their thefts, and compensating for what could not. Watching them face the consequences of their actions, a mix of relief and sorrow washed over me. Justice had been served, but at what cost? Divorcing Jake was a liberating, if painful, process. I also pursued compensation for the mistreatment, a legal acknowledgement of the suffering they had inflicted. Throughout the legal battles, my voice never wavered. My testimony was a cathartic release of all the pain and betrayal I had endured. In the end, sitting in a wheelchair on the steps of the courthouse, a sense of closure enveloped me. The journey had been harrowing, a test of my resilience and strength. As I look back on the tumultuous journey I've endured, it's hard not to feel a sense of pride mingled with disbelief. The road to recovery was fraught with uncertainty, yet here I am, making strides both literally and metaphorically that once seemed out of reach. My legs, which doctors feared might never regain their strength, are now carrying me forward, step by tentative step. The sensation of pebbles under my feet, a once mundane experience, now fills me with an overwhelming sense of victory. During a recent appointment, my doctor said, "Your progress is nothing short of remarkable," with a hint of real surprise in his voice. His cautious optimism in the early stages of my recovery was a long cry from this. Re-establishing contact with my pals has been crucial, and their steadfast encouragement serves as a continual reminder that I'm not fighting this battle alone. They reassure me, we're here for you, no matter what, as if to soothe the wounds caused by treachery. The man I once thought would be there for me no matter what, Jake, has turned into a remote, almost pathetic figure. His calls and apologies are a desperate attempt to regain my life after he was deprived of the financial bonanza he so selfishly expected. His voice is a mixture of optimism and despair as he begs, "Can't we just put all this behind us, start fresh?" The sound of laughter is so full of disdain and freedom that I can't stop laughing. "Begin anew, alongside you," I respond in a calm, assured voice. "I've gladly closed that chapter of my life. You are now only a footnote." In a pitiful attempt at reconciliation, the flowers he sends end up in the garbage. "You think a few roses can heal betrayal?" I laugh and throw them away easily. They serve as a reminder of my victories rather than my setbacks. I found a passion I never realized I had while adjusting to this new normal. Painting has turned into my haven and a means of expressing the range of feelings that go along with my journey. My most treasured items now are an easel and a set of paints, which enable me to capture the beauty of my surroundings and to bring back memories of my parents. I explain to everybody who asks, this is how I heal, using brushstrokes that demonstrate my tenacity. I have undergone a spiritual rebirth in addition to a bodily metamorphosis. They believed they could shatter me, but I announce with renewed resolve that I am stronger than ever. My tale, which was previously clouded by the acts of those who attempted to take advantage of me, is now one of victory and a reminder that there is light even in the darkest places. Despite having been shaped by suffering and betrayal, this phase of my life is characterized by development, fortitude, and an everlasting faith in the prospect of a fresh start. I've changed from who I was previously. I am more resilient, smarter, and prepared to face whatever is ahead with bravery and dignity.